past haunts us all. Whether it be a person, place, or thing, we are reluctant to let go. We call to the dead out of desperation and intrigue, searching for answers about what lies behind the shadows. We are paranormal researchers. We are Necromancers. Hello and welcome to the Necromancer live show. I am your host, Justin Brown, and welcome to episode 61 with Steve Asher. Before we get to know more about Steve, I want to thank you guys for joining us again this evening. We always like to see familiar faces and our loving paranormal community back on the show every single time it airs, so we appreciate you guys. We will go over to the chat moderators this evening. We have a little bit of a different setup this week. We have Matt Bitton helping us out tonight. What's up, Matt?
Hello there. Doing great. Not much.
All right, so you are on the YouTube end. So
Yes.
If anybody watching on YouTube has a question for Steve or just wants to comment and receive a shout out, Matt will do that, and I will go back to him periodically through the show. Over on Facebook, we have Missy. How's Missy this evening?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm rocking the contacts today. I can see clearly now. The rain is gone.
I knew you were going to do that.
I couldn't help myself. But if you have any comments or questions for Steve over there on Facebook, jot them down in the comment section. We'll get back to Missy, and we'll get those questions and comments to Steve periodically through the show. So you guys ready? Let's go. We're going to read Steve's bio, and it's very interesting. He's going to have some different insight for us this evening. Steve Asher is an author and paranormal researcher from Princeton, Kentucky. As an enthusiast of both the paranormal and hidden history, Steve travels the world studying ghost culture in places like Thailand, in the Far East. Having a frightening encounter with something that he could not explain, Steve became a lifelong researcher of those things curious and bizarre. As a 10-year veteran of the Kentucky Department of Corrections, he studied criminal justice and uses his skills in his fieldwork. Steve hosts an eclectic radio show called The House of Asher. Being a Kentucky native, Steve loves the energy of the southern night and says that this time is when he is most creative and best in tune with creative processes. This ancient connection to nature helps him write and conduct paranormal investigations. So that is interesting. Steve, what's up, buddy?
Hey, man, I appreciate you guys having me on.
No problem. I reach out to everybody that I connect to on social media, and you're next. You're episode 61, man, and we're going to have fun talking about all the stuff you do, and we're going to learn from each other and hopefully promote all the stuff that you got going on your end, and all good stuff in the paranormal unity sector is what I call the Necromancer live show. So, this is what we do here on Necromancer. We want to know your origins, right? We want to know your experiences that you spoke of in your bio and how that led to where you're at now in the paranormal field.
Okay. Well, I guess it takes it back to the beginning. I'm 48. Now, when I was a little kid, used to have some kind of weird situations happen in the home that we lived in, for the most part, that I grew up in, and sometimes see shadow people. I didn't know they were shadow people at the time, but they were just shadows and freaked me out. I had seen a dead relative one time, my great grandmother, but I was really young. I didn't quite get, oh, well, she shouldn't be here. It was just like, oh, that's weird. I actually saw her in the reflection of the kitchen window. I was very small, so I'm like pulling a chair up, trying to get a little water, and I was getting ready to go back to bed, and I look to I guess it's to the right of me, and I see the image of my grandmother, May, or my great grandmother rather, and she looked like she was kind of in a rocking chair and just easing back, nothing spooky, kind of with a little gentle nod to her head, like I just got the feeling of it, it's going to be okay, and she had passed not too awful long before that, and I was just like, that's really weird. So I look back and she's gone. I look in the mirror or the window, she's gone, and that wasn't that bad, but just different things, again, shadow people, things like that. And that wasn't an all the time deal. I'm not one of these guys who, see spooks around every corner and all that, Jerry Garcia, my toast and whatnot. But that really scared the crap out of me. I really had no, I didn't have the bones for it at the time. And so what I did was I started going to the local library. It was the George Kuhn Library here in Princeton. And I happened across the 103.3 section, which was the esoteric section, which just ties in with different religions and all kinds of stuff. And so here I am, looking up ghosts and reading guys like Hans Holzer and all that. And then I start kind of getting somewhat of a hang of that by the time I'm in my, early teens. And then I'm going off into ESP, spontaneous combustion, parallel universes, all that neat stuff, which I was a big sci-fi fan too. And which, as I got older, I did develop a love for horror, which I wear a Nosferatu shirt. But it was always a thing of it wasn't any great like, ooh, I want to go be an adventurer. I'm like, hey, I'd like to sleep without waking up screaming occasionally. That would be fun. So that's honest to God how it kind of happened. And once it sort of caught, it kind of became my thing. Obviously, I had other interests. I love music and, played music in bands forever and stuff. But that was, the paranormal mixed in with a little bit of horror and a little bit of sci-fi and all that. It's always sort of been my godhead, and it's always been there. So, growing up, getting married, raising kids and stuff, some of that goes in a bit of a back burner. You can't always be running out in the middle of the night if you've got to be up 5 a.m. at the factory or whatnot. So, but as I have, gotten a little bit older, the kids have got a little bit older, I've been able to do a little bit more and do a little bit more researching and do a little bit more back out in it. But, I've always tried to keep a good steady, bit of research going on from the time, since I was a young kid. So yeah, it's like 30 something years, probably going on 40.
Nice.
But, yeah.
You mentioned waking up screaming. Care to
I used to
elaborate
have
on
not.
that?
I'm sorry.
Just elaborate on that a little bit. I don't want to glaze over that.
Man, I mean, I'm not. I don't mean to be overly dramatic. I'm just had really, really vivid nightmares. I never slept walk. I had a sister that did, and I'm talking like get up, running into the walls, like a Three Stooges thing. I mean, she never went through the wall. That would have been great. I mean, it probably wouldn't have been great, but it would have been funny when you're 5. But it just weird stuff, thinking stuff's tugging at your bed sheets, stuff like that. Until I got a little bit older and knew kind of how to protect yourself, spiritually and then from things like that. I grew up in a pretty religious area, but by the time I was, going around 10 or 11, I was going to church and all that good stuff, but I didn't feel protected. I didn't feel like it did anything for me. And that's not to say it doesn't work for anybody else. It's wonderful. But for me, it was just like, I have no backup. So I felt really alone. And then that's when I started really delving into, how to protect yourself from darker entities and things like that. But yeah, it was a hard time for little Stevie back then. I mean, I was the youngest of 7, and my older brothers, I couldn't really talk to them about it, because how it is in the 70s, like, push you down and get out of here, you loser, But so yeah, I was kind of on my own with it. So, but yeah, I mean, that was a lot of the reason that I did start researching, just to kind of was it forewarned is forearmed and all that, and it gave, even if it was maybe a bit kind of a false safety, it gave me the feeling of, well, okay, I got my hands on something, this at least has something to do with what I'm doing, what I'm experiencing. Other people are having the same experiences, and maybe I can do something to protect myself. And it's really what it come from. And of course, as I got older and I had, there were shows like Taps and or the Ghost Hunters and all that was coming out. Then it was kind of cool to be kind of creepy and go out and do that. So then it was a lot easier to have other folks. It's like, yeah, man, let's have some voice recorders and this and that, some infrared lights. And, so you didn't feel quite as weird, being like, again, in a small Southern town, very conservative. It was kind of like being in the Addams Family in like normal suburbia.
I bet. What's interesting to me is trying to understand how the paranormal can affect people's dreams, how it has an impact on people's sleep when it comes to night terrors, nightmares, and stuff like that. So what interests me was you had a strong belief that entities would affect you when you try to go when you were trying to sleep. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd actually had a show not too long ago talking to a professor who was talking about sleep paralysis and night terrors and the whole night hag syndrome and all that. Which of course he was much more analytical and very much, well, this is the reason that happens, this and that. But there are people from all kinds of different cultures that describe the same type of beings, same type of this and that. And I don't go, I'm going on record as saying I'm not saying anything that I've encountered as a ghost or anything is whatever. I just know what's the old saying? It ain't art, but I like it or whatever. All I know is I forgot what was the thing they said in the thing. It says, what is it? I don't know, man. It's weird. It's peed off like that. All I know was it freaked me out and it stayed with me. And so, but yeah, it seems like a lot of stuff tends to happen like that in dreams. I know, being that I've worked in corrections for quite a while, I really learned to trust my gut. And if a dream says something, a lot of times I'll listen to it. And I'm not saying that in any way like I know things or whatever. I think we all have that. I think some people can tune it in better, just like a hunter. You take a person who doesn't hunt and a hunter into the woods, a regular person might walk past 3 or 4 different tells of different activity, where the hunter who is somewhat attuned to that world might go, no, look at this over here, look at this, whatever. And it's sort of like that is true for the paranormal, but you also have to come into it with a certain bit of skepticism. And, again, the kind of Occam's razor, you try to troubleshoot it. And, if something's plausible, that's not paranormal, it's probably what's up. But if you run out of matches, then, that's all that's left. Sometimes you got to go, well, it's at least very possible, But I do my best to not sell anybody on this and that, which, don't get me wrong, I am a writer, but all the ghost stories that I've done have either been my personal stories from when I've worked in the penitentiary or other officers. Just like the second book that has to do with the asylum, those were also people who worked there. And because the penitentiary in Western State, which it was called the Western Lunatic Asylum, they had sort of a revolving door. A lot of times we would have people that would either act up and play crazy and have to be shipped over to be checked out for 2 or 3 days, or they do some sort of self-harm to themselves. We did have people that really walked that line between a criminal and an insane person. So we would constantly be handing people off. So there was a lot of commonality there, and we got to know a lot of those people as a lot of them knew us. In fact, some of the security for the penitentiary worked, there, and then vice versa. So, there's that aspect to it as well. But you get used to kind of rolling in that world and dealing with that kind of stuff, and it's you try to explain it to somebody who's not really in the life, and it's sort of you kind of get that quiet kind of head cock, and you can just see the wheels turning. So all you can do is go, hey man, I actually teach life skills to special needs adults by day. So either people know me from that world or they know me from the paranormal world or writing and whatnot. So it's been a weird trip.
Yes, it always is in the paranormal. life in general, I think. But what's interesting about you being a corrections officer, we had Jay Yates on the show a couple episodes back, and he was a correction officer for a few years, and he had some pretty profound experiences in jails and prisons. And us as investigators, we go to those locations, jails, prisons, asylums. There's an energy there that we need to study because the phenomena seems to be more prominent and long lasting there. So we'll get into your experiences, your stories, and your books especially. But we're going to go to the chat moderators. We're going to do some shout outs real quick and see if there's any initial questions from the Peanut Gallery for Steve. Go ahead, Missy.
Okay, I have, at one point I had Paul Browning, Holly Mullins, Dave Spinks, Matt Benton, Danny Zatoli, Philip Wyatt, Laura Brownlove, Heather Elliott, Jeremy, I've got Lisa, I've got Jamie, and I've got Derek.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, guys. Any questions?
Nope.
All right. Well, don't be shy, guys. We need questions for Steve, okay? Matt, what's going over there on YouTube land?
Well, Missy, did you forget I was on here? Because you just named me on Facebook.
It said Matt Benton is watching.
Well, anyway, yeah, basically no questions. Just a lot of statements and me being made fun of again for looking like Zach Bagans, of course. And
Oh, man, that's cold.
same old. It's like every single live show in existence when I'm involved.
Go ahead and shout out everyone.
So
Yeah.
Truth Paranormal, Sam's Wings, and Scotty Fox. They were the main ones. Jessica Bias was on earlier. I don't know if she still is. And yeah, that's the only ones that are actually messaging right now. Sam's Wings, Scotty Fox. Yeah.
All right. Well, luckily I have some questions lined up for Steve right now, but I would love to hear the questions from chat. So if you have some, don't be shy. All right.
I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
So you are involved with human combustion, you said. You did some research into that. I was curious, like, what kind of research were you doing? Just like reading up about it, or did you actually go in any cases involving that? Usually that's going to be involving cops, I would think, but
Right. No, yeah, I've not did a Scully and Mulder moment yet. I have been very lucky, though, being that I am connected with law enforcement and talking with people about different weird things, because that's what it is. There's sort of a gallows humor when you have EMS or people that, and understand, guys, where I live in Princeton, Kentucky, I live like about 500 feet from the local funeral home. So there's a lot of energy here, and there's a lot of this and that. So, that in itself is a Stephen King book, or a Steve Asher book, maybe. But, I've not actually, wrote up on a combusted person. But yeah, there is actually a lot of research on that. And, I was talking to a friend of mine, and like, if you go to like some of the declassified stuff, because, there really has been people who worked, for like CIA and FBI who did research on these cases. I mean, some of that wasn't all just like, a thing that nodded to like Kojak the Night Stalker, which who I absolutely love. But, so there's a lot of ends to getting like, information about cases and stuff. So yeah, that was just one of the things that I really grooved on as a kid. I always thought that was extremely cool. Not that it happened to somebody, but that phenomenon, the way, the intricacies of it and how this and that, because you always have people going, well, whatever, this is that, whether there's a cigarette, there's a this, it's like, I've never seen anyone burn themselves up in a bed and the bed's fine, because beds are flammable as all get out, especially those old school beds. And so, yeah, no. Yeah. I mean, it was just one of those things that I had a curiosity about. Where I live actually has, is part of the path of the Trail of Tears, and there's a lot of caves here, and they're actually called karst systems. Karst systems are basically these large honeycombed cave systems that have big aquifers under them, and water had cut them out over millions of years. And we actually, the caves that run through here are actually connected to like the fingers of the Mammoth Cave system, and we've forever had stories of giant, large birds coming out of the caves, and creatures living under the caves, and all that. I have not ever been in these caves here. I've been in some caves around here, and I've seen photographs of that. But yeah, you're not getting this fat boy to go up in some caves that's that big. It ain't happening, y'all. Sorry. Um, I have been lucky enough to see some kind of curious stuff, especially in Eastern Kentucky. I've seen where people have been holed up inside of big smokestacks, where they're making pig iron and stuff like that, and there's still like imprints of where people's hands were and things like that, and just freaky stuff like that. That's about as close to the spontaneous combustion thing I've got to.
Interesting. So I'm assuming that you're a big believer in it.
I don't believe in much. I believe in love. No, I'm kidding. I mean, I do believe in love. I don't know. I'm sort of a dualistic guy. I start to say, well, I believe in hate too. I believe in there's times that you have to be. If someone's coming through your door, obviously you're going to protect your family. That doesn't mean that you hate them. It means you love your family. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm kind of an agnostic when it comes to the paranormal. I don't know if I ever want to fully believe, because I think if you fully drink the Kool-Aid, as it were, you lose your objectivity. There's a lot of stuff that, is kind of real quirky, like the reptilians thing and all that. And so, I mean, I'll check it out, but I'm not saying I'm going to think everybody's lizards,
Justin wouldn't check that out.
Well, if I read about it is one thing. If I see an alien over there anal probing, you, for example, I definitely would check it out.
I was just messing with you, Justin.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I seen enough anal probing in jail, so I think I'll
I
pass.
knew you were going to say that. I was waiting for it.
I was waiting for her. I could see her coming unglued about it. Yeah, man. Yeah, that was the paranormal too.
All right. Well, let's get into the stories in your books, because that's what I would really love to help promote the stuff that you do, because as a creator myself, I really support people who put themselves out there and put their work out there. So, let's talk about the you have a haunting, a book about the haunting in the Kentucky State Penitentiary, right?
All right, I'll give you the titles real quick, just because the way it's worded is sort of different. It throws people. It's a Haunting of series, and the first book is Hauntings of the Kentucky State Penitentiary, and the second book is the Hauntings of the Western Lunatic Asylum, which was the original name for the Western State Hospitals is known today. It actually changed after World War I, when a lot of the doughboys come back, and they were shell shocked and stuff, and they were in there, so they're writing letters home, and they're going, lunatic asylum, what the deuce? And so I said, man, y'all got to change this. These guys are soldiers and warriors and heroes. They're not lunatics. So, time marches on, things change. But yeah, man, Kentucky State Penitentiary, which I understand both the Kentucky State Penitentiary and the Western State Hospital are still both active. These aren't shut down. These still have live, living guys in there. And when I worked there, that was what was going on. My father, I guess I should have said this earlier on. My dad had worked there during the 50s and 60s, back when the whole race riots was going on and all that. And he worked there for about 5 years, and then he ended up coming over to Princeton, where we live now, and become a cop, which is way up to chief of police and whatnot. And so he had some stories and quirky things. My dad wasn't one of these, it was a dark and stormy night. My dad didn't really tell me those kind of stories. I love my dad, which he's passed now. My dad was kind of I don't know, maybe a little bit more of a Tony Soprano type. He was pretty quiet, but he could be pretty violent when he had to be. But that had to do with my grandfather, who actually was in the penitentiary for years ago for counterfeiting and bootlegging and some other nefarious stuff, kind of like just guys making it, and so he was there during like the 40s, 35s, 40s ish. And so kind of what do you get when you got a a convict and a guard, you get a writer eventually. But so I have got a real weird, dubious pedigree of being like a third generation in that. But yeah, man, it's one of the older. It's actually the only Supermax in Kentucky, and it's been up since I believe it was Christmas Eve, I think it was 1889, and it actually used to have a big plaque in the front of it. It said, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." And this was not a boys' camp. This was not a correctionals. They weren't correcting nothing, Jack. They were there for hard time, and they really got it. And the thing was, these could be anything from horse theft to anything. It could be kids stealing bread or something, whatever, because they had young guys in here, children, and really hardened, buggery types and sexual deviants and all kinds, man. So that was back in the days of just throw him the lockup, there he goes. So it was a real gladiator pit then. And due to that, I mean, even in the construction, it was built on, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the old Juliet jail. It was built on that look. It really does look like a castle. In fact, people around here refer to it as Castle on the Cumberland. It just sounds nicer, But it's a strange, man. I'm sitting there trying to word it in a way that doesn't sound poetic or stupid, but visually, it's beautiful. I mean, it's spooky. It looks like a big castle, but there's so much just in the way the stones are done. And actually, there were two Italian stonemasons that they hired to do the job using inmate labor. In fact, actually, there's reports where that there were several men who died in the construction of pouring stuff. They actually fell into it and they couldn't get them, so they just filled it up. I've not seen paper proving it, but that's the old story. And so, I mean, literally blood, sweat, and tears, life force went into that. And everything, it's all limestone quartz. And, obviously, anybody knows anything about quartz, they hold a certain resonance, and they hold energy. So it's all made out of quartz, sitting on top of quartz with a man-made waterway, the Cumberland River, which was where two cities were, and it was dammed up and flooded. So there's actually a ghost, like these watery ghost towns out in front of it, under 100 million gallons of water. And so I think all these things, plus the introduction of continual young violent gladiators, and because there's times these men would just fight to fight. These were times when officers would just bang on the cell doors and go, "Hey, who wants to fight today?" And some of these guards would go there, they take their badges off, and they beat the crap out of these guys, or they get the crap beat out of them and whatnot. And it was gnarly, dude. I mean, even in the times when I was there was still some of the old guard. And I don't even call myself a corrections officer. I was trained by old guards, and that are inmates. I mean, back in those days, they would show you which keys go to what locks. The trustees. So, yeah, I had a real different kind of education in the correctional system. But yeah, I mean, honest to God, I could probably take you over the length and width of this place. It would be easier for me to go where there isn't a weapon as opposed to where there is a weapon. I'd be there all day. Used to go through there with metal detectors, especially on midnight shift. And we would go through on midnight shift sometimes, and we would find, old, rolled up knives and this and that, and what they were trying to smelt, trying to melt down this and that to make a rudimentary, start for a gun, like a zip gun. It's all kinds of stuff, man. And they're forever building it. Even to this day, when I would talk to some of the guys, I'm saying, don't give me information, but, honest to God, like if something went down, and he's like, yeah, he says, I'm not going to tell you where, but me and anybody else in here is within about 5 steps of a weapon, just because of where it is. And I was like, well, yeah, that's probably true. And, I got a lot of clarification from older guards on these stories, a lot of clarification from older inmates. And You know, it was one of those things where, you know, initially administration wasn't real crazy about the book coming out because I think they thought it was going to be a smear, you know, and like all the secrets of hangings at, you know, and things like that maybe been a little, could have been handled differently, or maybe they didn't get there quick enough purposely or something. But, you know, they still weren't crazy about a ghost book coming out, but that's okay. For the most part, a lot of the officers really enjoyed it. I actually met, you know, people on Facebook contacted me who has family serving that they sent the book to them, and then they wrote them back. It's like, Jesus, man, that's crazy. Yeah, that right up here on five cell house on the second floor, you will see shadows running in and out of the showers at night. You will hear, you know, the sounds like somebody's being stabbed. That was really, it was strange. It was because I never ever even thought about that the people serving in there would read my book. And
Yeah.
so it was like, I don't know, it was just weird. It was kind of surreal because just wasn't that long ago I was walking those same halls, walking those same, you know, cell blocks.
Well,
Strange.
yeah, if you think about it, like say if you're from Massachusetts and you're going through the library or a book sale and you see Ghosts of Massachusetts, you're going to want to pick that up, flip it over to the back, and read the synopsis. So it makes sense that people who live in the prison would be interested as much because they live
Well,
there.
well, the thing is, this is Western Kentucky, and Western Kentucky is a lot like Eastern Kentucky in regards of, you know, we're not in the golden triangle of Lexington, Louisville, Frankfort, which is kind of where all the money and the power emanates, and it slowly bleeds out. And so, you know, times can be rough here too. But the penitentiary was the standby. A lot of times, you know, old farmers, tobacco farmers, things like that, would work there on off seasons just to make their money. But in time, a lot of people was like, you know, for the most part, I'm going to be inside in a dorm. Odds are they're not going to lay me off. Odds are, you know, they're not going to say, whatever, man, you know, go home. We don't have any work for you today. It's every day. That thing's not closed one day since, you know, 1889. And short of it outgrowing or not being able to keep up with the ACAs, which is basically the standards put forth that says a cell has to be at least this big. You have to give these guys X amount of time out in the yard or some sort of exercise, and they have to have mail and a certain ratio of food, a certain dietary level, you know, of proteins and fats and what, you know, all that stuff, which is important. But there will be a time when just the buildings won't be able to grow anymore. You can't knock out a wall any further than, you know, 5 stories up than it is already. At least if they can, I haven't seen it yet. But so it's probably in its kind of circling the bow. I'd say maybe within the next 20, 25 years, they'll do something different. But I mean, they've built, we don't only just have the electric chair now, we also have lethal injection. And you have a certain amount of inmates who's been there so long that they have the choice between either, which is, again, a very weird, dubious kind of honor. But, you know, they're still pouring a lot of money into it, so I don't think they're going to shut it down. But I mean, it's still a very violent place. You know, we have riots, we have, you know, officers being attacked. I actually had a friend who does a lot of stuff. She's actually a soap maker now, and does a lot of stuff with candles and what's those little satchels with the smell good. I suck with this, the foo-foo stuff. What's it called? Unmute her, man.
Missy, do you want to answer that? I don't know either.
She's muted.
I don't have any idea.
Like a satchel or
a satchel. Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to remember what my grandma called them. I just call them foo-foos. I don't know what they're called. Jeez. But anyway, but she makes that. But she had actually worked in the kitchen there for one time, and she was attacked, and I'm not sure if they attacked her with a can opener, which an industrial can opener is basically a large rod that you slide down into a housing. It clamps down and you crank it, and it opens these huge containers of peas or pudding or whatever. And they basically about bludgeoned her to death, and she got out of there obviously and couldn't come back, to work there. She had so much reconstructive work done and everything. So it's not just like the good old days or the bad old days of Tommy guns in 1930s, and because there was a lot. I mean, I can show you bullet holes all through that place, but it's still very violent. It still likes to eat people up. I mean, and this will sound dramatic, but to me, it's a place of evil. I'm kind of a dualistic guy. I try not to see things in absolutes of good or evil, but that's one place. If anything was evil, I'd say it's definitely up on there.
Right. All right. Before we move on, let's go back to the comments on Facebook and YouTube. Missy, any questions for Steve yet on Facebook?
No, it's actually been pretty quiet on Facebook. Becky said they're juju bags.
There you go.
Juju bag. I thought that was candy. I'm thinking of juju beans, right?
Yeah.
I have a question. I read in a book somewhere that they kept patients from Waverly Hills before it was built in Mammoth Cave. Is that true?
Okay, I've heard different stuff too, because some people said because of the temperature control and because of the moisture. Because you got to understand, back in the old days of Waverly, just like because the Western Lunatic Asylum also had like a TB ward. Just most people don't know about it. That's the thing, because they didn't have the kind of promotion that Waverly's had, and they're just quieter about it. This is a very secretive area, but I've heard that too. And I don't know exactly what it was. I guess it was wintertime, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it was real cold, and I think it was for whatever reason they thought, well, we'll temporarily set them up in here. What could go wrong? So,
to get in there to snoop around.
Yeah, I mean, I would dig it. I love the concept of caves. I just don't want to be crawling through 2.5 miles of like snakes and more snakes. I don't like snakes.
We just send Matt in with a GoPro. That's all we'll do.
Good luck, Matt.
All right.
Right.
So you're going to see Zach for that. Come on.
I would definitely do anything like that, though.
All right, Matt. I think I've seen some questions for Steve, right, on YouTube.
So far, it's just one question I see.
Okay.
Most of it was statements of other stuff, people talking in the chat, and me and Joe arguing in a playful way. So basically, we have one. I don't know what this Sam's means by this, but she says, "Does Steve help others with this?" I guess your work is what I'm thinking.
Do I help others with this? Well, if you're referring to like if there's families or something that have something freaky going on in their home, we try not to. I do my best to sort of do the kind of tough love on this to a point. I'm kind of stringent and going like, look, guys, what's going on in the house? Are you doing this and that? Or, if they seem, and again, I'm not a psychologist. Obviously, my study is criminal justice. But if I get some red flags that the people are having some sort of issue that maybe is less spooky and less, I don't want to say kooky, but that'll work. I'll kind of suggest, well, hey, maybe speak to your pastor about it, or speak to your, whoever, and that kind of stuff. So you have to vet people, obviously. But yeah, I mean, we've tried to go in places, especially when they have little kids and they're really scared. But we always try to handle it in a way that, because again, I'm a father now a granddad, so I don't want to go in there and be leaving in these kids will be sitting there shaking in the corner with their covers pulled up to their face, and why agitate a weird situation just for data. I think that's a little I'm not going to call names out, but you know what I'm talking about. If some people go in there with the whole "come at me, bro" thing and just stir crap up, and that kind of pees me off, just for the fact that, right, let's say these are people. I mean, not the people. Obviously, you're talking with people. Well, at least you hope you're talking to people. Then maybe ghosts too. But I'm talking about the people or spirits or whatever that were there. God forbid if it was one of my old dwellings and it was maybe my grandmother or my mother, I wouldn't want them playing parlor games with her and clowning with her. But, it's just one of those things. I think it's disrespectful to the whole situation. And if you're gonna just do code data, go to somewhere that there's nobody living there, and that you can, set up a real good control situation and do different whatever tests that you want to your heart's, to your heart's desire. Just go crazy. But when you're dealing with other people and people who are already frightened, suggestible, you really gotta go in there with a kind of a silk glove with it, and you don't want to. Again, like I said, I just don't want to make it worse. But yeah, it's a long way around to answer you. Yeah, we try, and we've generally had very good situations. I'll tell you of one, and I won't get too deep into it, but they kept having shadows and like it's the freaking weirdest thing. It's like, okay, say you're burning like a styrofoam cup. You know how it kind of makes that black wispy smoke? They were having that coming out off the floor. We checked the floor. It was nowhere near, no vents. It was nowhere. Checked under the house. We checked for radon, all kinds of stuff, Jimmy Hoffa, nothing was there. So as time went on, I could tell they weren't telling me something. And we were doing some stuff, and I think I had to do something with a closet or open something, and boom, hey, there's a Ouija board. Boom, hey, there's a couple candles. Well, okay, hey guys, what's the story? Oh well, yeah, the kids, and kind of find out the mom was a real big fan of that. Which I know people that have worked Ouija boards as part of their family's spiritualist religions and whatever, and they don't, play around, and they keep it serious as a tool. But these kids were goofing, and they called up something. So, I had to go at the time. Again, I was a bit more religious, and we go through and kind of do like the Lord's Prayer, and, anoint the door with, the oil, with oil and the sign of the cross and holy water and all that stuff. I mean, I wasn't Peter Vincent about it, but slinging it and all this. But, I went in there, I was trying to be serious, and what was the old saying, with a contrite spirit, and everything was cool. Things mellowed out. Well, wasn't 2 months later, I got a call from the mom, and it's like, hey, yeah, we're having a little bit of this and that. I'm like, okay. I was like, I said, that's weird considering you were going to get rid of all this stuff, and because you promised, whatever. She got kind of quiet, and I went, look, you do what you got to do. You're a grown person. Your daughters are teenagers. They're going to do what they want to anyway. But there's no point in me coming in and wiping your backside if you're just going to keep crapping on yourself. That's not the words I used. I said it was a little bit more kinder than that, but that's what I felt. And, in time they did get rid of it, and the activity stopped because they stopped paying attention to whatever this entity was. But yeah, so I'm saying you can get in kind of a tar baby situation, meaning sometimes you're in a quicksand situation, and there's some people who are kind of addicted to that energy and addicted to the drama. I call it kind of the Pretty Little Liars of the paranormal world, and they just want to roll in it. And some people you can't help.
It's difficult work.
Well, I mean, I take stuff to heart. I wouldn't call myself empathic or stuff, but I mean, even for being kind of a big prison guard-ish type guy, I mean, it bothers me, especially when there's kids involved, and I know something goofy is going on, and for whatever reason the parents won't chill. It's hard. You just kind of want to go, man, what's wrong with you guys? Come on, And again, I mean, if you look on my walls, it's full of kooky, paranormal, haunted stuff and whatnot. But I ain't lighting no candles. I ain't drawing no pentacles on the ground, or fresh out of sheep's blood. So,
We
I mean, You got to be a little smarter than that.
We have more questions now.
Right. Go ahead.
Okay, so now, hold on, I'm scrolling up again. Okay, so, Rich, these are questions for Steve, not me. So, and no, I'm no Aaron. This is, I'm Matt Benton. Okay. Sam says, being a cop, if someone comes up with a spiritual problem, does he look into this?
Okay, first let's make this extremely clear. Not a cop. My dad was a cop. I wanted to be Carl Kolchak. I wanted to be an investigator. I even had the little hat, the little press card in it. I was that big of a geek. Or I wanted to be on Star Trek. Like I said, I was a correctional officer. For a short time, I was a jailer. But so are they saying like just out of nowhere? Are we talking about somebody? I go to a house and there's a fight and there just happens to be a ghost go by. I'm not quite sure what you mean. In the capacity of a law officer, I could do anything. I could say, other than going, I can't tell you to maybe speak to your parish priest. I cannot tell you to, maybe say the Lord's Prayer or something from the Quran or something from the Flying Spaghetti Monster pamphlet, whatever you believe in. You have to be real careful because once you start overlapping which is the South. I mean, you see a lot of stuff, in God We Trust and stuff. I want to get into that. But yeah, you have to be real careful with that. I mean, but the thing is, people knew it. When I was working at the pen, they would have somebody, hey, I've got a cousin that lives over in Dawson, or hey, I got an aunt that lives, in Paducah, Kentucky, and they're just got demons running all through the place. I'm like, whoa. First of all, it was a demon. I don't want to go there, and y'all need to leave. I don't play with demons. I've never encountered anything like that. I've encountered dark stuff, but guarantee it wasn't a demon because I probably wouldn't be here talking about it, or I'd be floating off the ground one or the other. But to answer that question, no, I've never helped anybody in that capacity as a cop, because I'm not.
Yeah. Sam said something also similar. I'm guessing let's just change it to when you're doing this work when you're in the working in corrections at all, out of curiosity.
Yes. Well, see, that's the thing.
Okay.
When I come to wow, man, let me explain this. I worked in radio for off and on for years, and in this little market, you don't eat. You just can't. You can't make your nut, as the kids say. So, I worked in construction with jackhammers and all that good stuff, and all that freaking Bon Jovi video type crap. You see the guy with the sparks and all that crap. So did all that kind of construction work and whatnot, and then I just come to corrections because again, it doesn't shut down. There's medical, but yes, by the time I got to go there, I had a lifetime of hearing from my dad about a handful of quirky things, curious places. So I could not bring equipment onto the property, but I did very much use little tells, set things up, maybe put coins in a certain area in a certain position on a walk and there's no one there, and monitor if there's any movement or things like that, or try to entice responses and things like that. So I did it as best as I could with basically very, very primitive non-electronic tools. And I'll leave it at that. But, they would probably look at me pretty sideways if I'm walking around with divining rods up and down the wall. Which, yes, I do use divining rods. I know it's not sexy and techish and all that. There's no blinking lights on it. But what's cool about it is batteries don't go down. And God forbid you drop it off the side of something. Well, I got to go find me some more copper lines, as opposed to, wow, I'm gonna have to sink about another $400 into this box that I just purchased.
Another thing that Sam says was changes to corrections. What did the people in corrections think of you doing paranormal work?
Okay, well, I mean, when it first kind of come to light, which I never hid it. I just didn't talk about it. Somebody asked me. It's one of those type of deals, the first one, Fight Club, right? There's why open yourself up for it. But, you would have some supervisor to be singing the Ghostbusters theme, and you come down the hall, and, which I start kind of dancing along. You take the power from it, you laugh, and then which that's how I got over. I'm very lucky to say that in the time of being in there, and I've broken up some big dudes. I'm talking some big John Coffey looking dudes. I never had a hand put on me. And for the most part, the fights I broke up, the guys split. They were laughing because they couldn't focus because I was hitting with one-liners. So I've been very blessed with that. But most people, how do I say this? If there's a bunch of people, a lot of people were kind of quiet and kind of haha, but then they would come around and go, "Hey, I didn't want to have anything said because they're going to laugh me out of the office." But yeah, my uncle worked over here, and all, hey, I seen stuff down in blah blah, in the morgue or whatever, death walk. And once people knew that I was okay to talk to, especially once the old timers vouched for me and said, "Yeah, Asher, he's a good guy," that's when the floodgates open, and then people really open themselves up. I mean, because that's where all my stories come from. In fact, I mean, I'm actually putting together a second volume because I had folks come into book signings and go, "Why didn't you talk about Kelly Moss, which is one of the famous ghosts there? Why didn't you talk about the leather shop or whatever?" Which is an S&M club. They actually made leather garments and stuff. So could have been a leather shop. I don't know. But anyway, but I said, well, I didn't have a story, so I got the story, and so now I'm going to write a volume 2 to that after the third book, which is going to be about a haunted orphanage in this part of Kentucky. But anyway, but yeah, they were kind of weirder about when I was actually gonna do the book, because I tried to get permission from the one-time warden to come in with my crew, with equipment, not take any live video, just still photography and things like that of the old Death Walk, which is 15 left. There's been a lot of activity there. That's where old Sparky, which is the electric chair, has been forever. That's where that's where the death gurney is. That's where the death tunnels are. That's where it really pops off. And I couldn't get permission. I've tried it with 2 or 3 different wardens while I worked there, and it was just like, no dice, kid. So they said it's too much of a security risk. So I tried.
Yeah, we have more questions. So basically, Rich also mentions carry a flashlight and try to use a flashlight. I'm guessing the flashlight,
where you unscrew it and you try to a point. I mean, I try to do something again to where you would have vibrations or a B, different things can happen, different weather, if it's stormy and stuff, different things can affect electronics differently. So most of the stuff I tried again was, like putting coins in a certain area, or maybe, whatever, humming a certain piece of music that, maybe some of the old timers really like, some old country, some old Waylon Jennings or something. I know it sounds stupid, right? But a lot of these guys, that's all they had was music and whatnot. And sometimes you could tap on the bars. And this is usually when no one was there. You don't want to do this at nighttime. Just trust me, you'll get a response, but it ain't from ghosts. And you kind of tap a certain little, like almost like the dun 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 dun. And occasionally you would get something, man, it almost sounded like it's going dun dun back. Not all the time, and not just like super bold, but it would sound like something was trying to do something. That's very an innocuous way of doing it when you really can't carry much equipment with you. So, and I know this is probably very different than a lot of people, because I know people, man, they tech out, they go in there like Iron Man, they got freaking everything. And I just don't roll like that. I go a lot with gut. I go a lot with EVPs. I go a lot with, what I can capture with, IR photography. But yeah, it's just at that particular time, I wasn't able to bring any of that in.
Speaking of gut, Val mentioned something. As a correction officer, you come across bad vibes, bad people. Do you feel the same vibe when it comes to the paranormal, or does it feel different?
No, it's identical. I mean, that's tell that guy he's right on top of it. It's a thing where pretty much since early 20s, especially when you're playing in bands and punk clubs and, Memphis can be gnarly. Sometimes you pass people. I don't want to say it like it's like in the Unbreakable movie. It's like, he's got a gun. How do you know it was a gun? Or how do you know it was this type of gun? sometimes you just know. Sometimes it just screams at you. And let's say you're wrong. That's okay. That's fine. But, if you don't, almost every time that I did not heed my gut, it bit me. Yeah. I think that's huge.
You want me to keep going, Justin, or you want to go to different questions?
Pick out one really good one that you see, and then we'll start wrapping it up. I know an hour goes by really fast.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm looking at the new ones I just now saw right here. One sec. Just seeing if there are any good ones. Okay, so I have two from Scotty, but you say one of them. Let's just do this one. What protection does Steve use?
Well, a lot of times it depends on where I'm going. If I'm going to someone's home who is Catholic, we'll probably use like the Michael, Archangel Michael prayer or whatever. If we're going to someone who, whatever, say maybe we happen to have went to somebody, and we dealt with somebody who was Muslim here in Kentucky, and I had them say a prayer and do what kind of they felt to protect the group. Sometimes it's just kind of getting hands together and saying we're protected by white light. We only want to speak to positive creatures. And when the basic. We don't get too hippy dippy with it, but that's big. And a lot of it is going there with the right mindset. If you're sick, if you're super peed off, if you're just not feeling right, don't go. And sometimes I've told people, so look, I know you're having some issues at home. Just take a break, or maybe you can help me read, look at some of the software or whatever, but I don't want you in the middle of this because you're going to be susceptible.
All right. Awesome. Well, real quick, guys, I'm sorry we didn't get to all your questions. But maybe you can friend Steve on Facebook or email him and ask him yourself after the show. But we're going to wrap this up, Steve. Let everybody know what books you already have published and where that they can go buy them or check them out on Audible if they're on audiobook or anything. And let everybody know how they can follow you on the stuff you do in the paranormal field and your other books coming up.
Okie doke. I'll try to make it quick. If you go to Steve, this is all lowercase together, SteveEAsher.com. That has links to all my books that go through Simon & Schuster. And also they do have them on audiobook and Nook and all those different formats. The books are Hauntings of the Kentucky State Penitentiary, Hauntings of the Western Lunatic Asylum. And like I said, go to SteveEAsher.com. You can see my show, House of Asher, on YouTube under Conflict Radio. They carry all my feeds from that, and check out my stuff on Facebook, check out my stuff on Twitter, whatever. Or email me at all lowercase and together, ILASHERS@yahoo.com, and I'll help anybody out as I can. And if it's something that seems serious and you really need to talk, we can either text back and forth. I'll give you my personal phone number. Just please don't share it. And other than that, I'm here to help.
Awesome. Well, Steve, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's very nice to hear, your experiences, that I believe that everybody has something to offer the paranormal field, not only because they're individual, because everybody has their own unique take on their experiences and how they convey them. So I'm glad that you were able to come on the show, and hopefully I'm able to pick up some of your books here in the near future and check them out. I would love to go down if those places are available to investigate. I'm sure that the prison's still active. Like you said, it's still open, so you can't really.
Right.
So,
well, there's several other places, and there's so many other creepy, dark stories I can tell you. Maybe in the future, if you want me to have me back on, we can kind of touch into some of the freaky folklore and whatnot of that. I'd love that.
Right. Like we've been to Waverly Hills Sanatorium a couple times in the last 2 years, but that's the only thing we've got to do in Kentucky recently. But once we go down towards that area, I have had a few Kentucky natives on the show, so I'll definitely get back in touch with you to get some leads on some places to go for sure.
Like I said, I'm your Huckleberry, guys, and thank you so much. And before we go, God bless you guys. Have a great Thanksgiving, and everybody out there, keep listening on the show. It's an awesome show. These guys are wonderful, and keep the faith, and don't be afraid to be a little scared.
Thanks again, Steve. If you want to hang out on the video call, you can. If you got to go, you got to go. But I'm going to wrap it up. All right, buddy?
All right, buddy. I'm here.
All right. There you go. Steve Asher, everyone. He's a pretty awesome guy, pretty down to earth and straightforward. There's no funny business. So go check out his books. Like I said, it's not easy putting a book together, putting it out there, getting it published. So please consider checking them out, especially, it being Kentucky. Kentucky is in the heart of haunted America, in my opinion. So there's a lot of value and information there that might interest you. All right, guys, thanks for joining us again. Next week, we'll check out who's going to be on Necromancer next week. Just give me a minute. Let me see. Let me open this up. Mary Marshall. Okay, I think she's the Paranormal MD, if I'm not mistaken. That's what she's known by. So that's who we have on Necromancer next week. Tune in Tuesday on the Justin Brown blog page for my Paranormal Soapbox, 8 p.m., same bat time, same bat channel. Thank you guys for joining us. You guys are in my heart. I love you guys. We're going to check out the social links again here real quick. If you're interested in the paranormal work we do, please check out Interface Death on the website, interfacedeath.net. Please check that out. Consider subscribing to the mail list to keep up to date with everything that we're doing. We're going to talk about patreon.com/support Interface Death in a moment, but please check that out. Follow the Necromancer Live Show on Facebook and follow Interface Death on Twitter and on Instagram. Okay, if you like what you see and if you want to support these live shows, if you want to support the paranormal research that we do and all the video production we do, you can do that financially and get rewarded through patreon.com. All the names you see here on the list here: Clay Borman, RJ Murphy, Danette Goldtrip, Jessica Bias, Scotty Fox, Sherry Brett, Bill Davis. They all support us on Patreon. Thank you very much. Without them, this content would not be possible. It would not grow and become better each and every time we do it. If you would like to see your name plastered all over the video productions and live shows we do, consider checking out patreon.com. There is a lot of cool rewards you can get for your support. So I'm going to leave it there. Thanks, guys, very, very much. You guys have a happy Thanksgiving. You stay safe if you're traveling tomorrow, and you guys have a good night. Stick around for some video promotions if you have not seen them, and I will see you next time.
What was that?
I don't know. I feel like I can't breathe in this room.
Generally, Justin, when you guys investigate, do you just take long pauses, wait to see if you hear things, observe everything that's going on?
It depends on the location and our experience with the location. So in this case, at Waverly Hills, since we've been here before, we've heard a lot of stories, done a lot of research, and investigated. We typically like to listen a lot because we hear the coughing, we heard it last time, so we didn't hear it again.
this room over here? What the fuck, dude?
Whoa.
That's weird.
You didn't do anything, right?
No, I just turned.
Justin too close.
No,
He opened that door and then went off.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you just run out of there?
Side effects of prolonged isolation: paranoia, depression, helplessness, brain stimuli decreases. Now, what happens when you put a man isolated in 3 paranormal infested buildings for 3 nights in each location, all by himself? No one to help me. No one to protect me. Just me versus you. Does paranormal activity increase?
So what do you think of this piece of evidence?
I think by far it's the best piece of evidence we have seen here.
That's flat out amazing. And that's something we've never captured.
Oh, wow.
What?
First
Nobody
time
has
caught.
ever got it on video.
That's creepy.
In 11 years.
So no one's ever caught this on video?
Never,
Never.
ever.
Here is my story, and here is what I went through for my research into the paranormal.